fun. Meet him in the elevator. Sorry. You're sneaky. Yeah. Do that.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
We're looking at the data. So, right.
Christine, if I could we just maybe do introductions so we can speed things along a little bit? You
Yes,
okay with that?
absolutely. So let's start off with names and titles of everyone, just so they can have it on record.
Ed Graff, Superintendent.
Hi, Kim Ellison, Minneapolis School Board Chair.
Good afternoon, Amy Fearing, Senior Academic Officer.
Eric Moore, Senior Officer of Accountability Research Network.
I don't want to rush you all along, but we do have kind of a time crunch here, so.
Are you good?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, great.
You set? All right. Well, good evening. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. We're here to provide a brief update tonight on the progress that we're making with mediation, negotiations with the MFT, ESP groups in Minneapolis Public Schools. I say brief because we are still expecting to go back to the table and continue with negotiations. I'm here with the board chair, members of the negotiation team and staff to provide you with an update. I first want to reaffirm that, again, as our It is our commitment and priority to be working to get our students back in school. And anything other than that is a distraction. So we know that we are on day 7 of having our students out of school, and we want them back in school as quickly as possible so that they continue to be with their teachers in their learning spaces. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chair Ellison.
Thank you, Superintendent. So this morning, we made good movement at the negotiation table. We were scheduled to be in negotiations from 10 to 4 today. But like Superintendent said, we're expected to go back down. We're continuing negotiations later today. So I'm feeling really good about that. MPS has been negotiating. I know there's a narrative that we are not at the table, but that is just not true. We have been, negotiation team has been here every day this week, here all day today, asking to work all weekend. We desperately want our children back in school, and that is our goal, and we're working really hard to get there. Specifically, there have been 21 mediation sessions between the district and the union, and like I said, working hard to meet every day. Like Director Caprini said yesterday, we have reached our financial limits, but we're looking at creative ways to meet the needs of our workers. Specifically, we have the contract that we have proposed would see a 7.4% impact on wages for ESPs. I'm sorry, for teachers, and a 9% wage impact for ESPs. We're asking mediators to schedule more meetings, to schedule longer meetings, because like I said, we really want to get students back in school. As a matter of fact, this morning, movement looked so good, the district asked the union if we could ask employees to go back to school while the adults continue to mediate to get a contract negotiated. And so that's where we are today.
Good afternoon, good evening. I wanted to give some brief information on lost instructional time. I know that's been on the minds of many people. Starting Tuesday, March 15th, when classes had been canceled for 6 days due to the strike, Minneapolis Public Schools did go below the required 165 minimum days for the school year. This is required by our state statute. By Friday of this week, Minneapolis will be under the required instructional days by 3 days. Starting Wednesday, March 9th, which was last week, most middle school and high schools were already below their additional instructional hours. The state of Minnesota requires both instructional days and instructional hours. By early next week, all schools, including our elementary schools, will also be below their instructional hours. We're continuing to look at options with the Minnesota Department of Education of how we'll make up that lost instructional time. The hours will be a part of a revised calendar that will come to pass once the strike is over. We know families want to know when these things will happen, but these decisions have not been made yet, but they will be made in collaboration with our teachers and our ESPs. This information will be shared just as soon as possible, and we do thank our families and our communities for the patience during this uncertain time. I'll pass it over to Senior Leader Moore.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. I've been a member of the bargaining team for over a year, and I know that we've had a lot of back and forth conversations about equity. And what I'm thinking about right now, as we're on day 7 of the strike, is that we need our students back in school. We're seeing a lot of concerns about learning loss and opportunity. And so when I think about our package that we're sharing regarding equity, our equity proposal, I want to highlight a couple of things. Our equity package, we're still presenting our teacher of color memorandum of agreement. To this date, we've lost excess 50 teachers of color, 30 of which were tenured. But we want to continue to have conversations about ways to protect our teachers of color. We know that they're extremely valuable, that we know that they make a significant difference in the lives of our students, both our students of color and our white students. We want to continue as a proposal to accelerate our hiring timeline to better compete with districts when hiring teachers. We have one of the latest hiring cycles, and so we want to move up the hiring timeline by 4 to 5 weeks so that we're competitive with other districts in recruiting teachers of color. we want to continue with our proposal to do mutual consent hiring to ensure that all teachers that are in schools that are what we consider high poverty, 70% or more free or reduced lunch, that those teachers want to be there, because that matters. So we want to make sure that teachers aren't just placed, but that they want to be in the locations for our students in which they need those teachers the most. We want to excited actually to collaborate on what we call an anti-bias proposal called ABAR, in which we'll collaborate with our teachers, our MFT and our ESPs on equity training. We need to work together developing equity training that will make the difference in the lives of our teaching force, our teachers and our staff. We're also proposed adding mentors of color to support our new teachers of color and our ESPs. And so that's something that I believe we have a shared value on, that we need to commit to helping our teachers and our ESPs navigate our system and when there's challenges arriving in. We also have a proposal called Black Men Teach on the table, and I hope we have shared values where we want to hold in 2 schools vacancies for black male teachers, black males that want to become teachers, and so we want to have those teachers in those schools, teachers, and nurture them and give them layoff protections as we build a critical mass of African American male teachers. We know that matters. Our community has said that makes a difference. Finally, our last proposal among many is that we want to provide a recruiting incentive for bilingual, multilingual teachers. We value language and culture in Minneapolis Public Schools, and so we hope that the union shares our values and that we should be supporting more our teachers who are bilingual, multilingual. I mean, these are things that we believe are critical for our students. In addition to, as we mentioned before, providing livable wages for our ESPs and teachers. And so we value all of our staff, but again, it's critical that we get our students back in school.
So just to add on it in terms of negotiations today, we did counter to a couple of proposals for ESPs. We countered around labor management as well as benefits language. And then with our MFT organization, we countered with caseloads in the contract. So those are 2 significant movements that we made today. I also want to highlight, as we have been in this space for 7 days with our students not in school, we've been working very closely with community members and partners to ensure that our students are able to access safe spaces. Our priority, again, is caring for our students, and we desperately want them back in school. But until that happens, we're going to do our part to ensure we get them some resources and opportunities in the community. So a couple of things to highlight. Beginning tomorrow in our middle schools over at Justice Page and Northeast Middle School, we'll be providing opportunities, safe spaces for games and activities from 12 until 3 p.m. We also have programming happening at our high schools, Edison, Henry, and North, where they will be offering in support of the Beacons Network activities for students. And then one of our partners, Project Success, is hosting a day of cooking and personal finance from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. And again, an opportunity for students to find interaction and support in safe spaces while we continue to work through these negotiation situations. And then finally, encouraging everyone to access our website. You know, we are still maintaining our mental health services, our school-based clinics are still operating, and we have a number of resources online that parents and family members should be accessing to find out how we can take care of our children during this strike that's occurring. So with that, just say thank you again. We would like to get back to negotiations. We'll take a few minutes here to answer any questions you might have or follow-up details.
One clarification, when you said that you lost 50 educators of color,
Yeah.
that tells the time frame,
Yeah.
is that this school year or?
Yeah, they were excess, so as part of our budgeting process. Those teachers potentially would be changing schools, and or they may not have a position in the district. But 50 teachers were impacted by our lack of ability to come to an agreement by the timeline that we had set. So it's 50 and then 30 which were tenured.
Is the resignation of Josh Pauley from the school board affecting negotiations in any way, and how do you feel about his departure?
Sure, I can speak to that quickly. It is not affecting negotiations. I have lost friends who have served on school boards in other communities. It has been a really hard time to be a school board member from the pandemic, mask mandates, CR critical race theory, and then in Minneapolis with the negotiations, and it's a national trend, and I consider Director Polly a friend, and I'm sad to see him go. Thank him for his service and wish him well. I mean, it's hard. It's been hard on him and his family. But
Did he talk about why he decided to step down in any communications to you?
no, not really. He called and he just said he had submitted a resignation to the board clerk as policy.
Board Chair Ellison, you described good progress here. I mean, how would you describe kind of the feeling in the room right now between MPS and MFT right now? Do you feel like progress is being made here, Joel?
I do feel, like Superintendent said, we did a lot of contract language discussion today. We haven't gotten down to the finances yet, but the conversation's going back and forth. People are agreeing, they're making recommendations. The room felt good, and I think both sides felt good about the movement we made today.
And Superintendent Graff, I asked you this last night here, but now that we know Friday the district will be below state minimums for days of instruction, does MPS have a plan at this point for how they're going to recover those days?
So again, as stated, we have to come to an agreement on a contract, and we also have to come to an agreement on how we're going to return to work. And so those are things that will have to be negotiated as part of the overall package. But it's our commitment and priority to get our students back in school with their educators and their teachers in the classroom. And so I remain optimistic that we'll be back in school soon.
Do we have a timeline of what that would look like if an agreement is reached, how soon kids would be back in the classroom?
So I think it was mentioned already by Chair Ellison that there's nothing to prevent students from being in the classroom right now. It's part of the conversation that we're having about negotiations and trying to get that done as quickly as possible. So that's the update that I can provide to you.
Can anyone say what percentage of education support professionals are people of color, and how does that compare to the demographics of the teachers bargaining unit?
I believe the percentage is roughly 50% of our ESPs, education support professionals, are people of color, compared to approximately 80% white teaching staff, 20% of the teaching staff are staff of color. So again, the equity proposals that we've identified have identified some challenges in the contract that we hope to negotiate so that we can accelerate the number of teachers of color in our district. And so this is what we're bargaining on and hope to reach an agreement on with the proposals that I identified.
Do you guys know how many kids or how many parents have pulled their kids out of Minneapolis Public Schools because of this? And if that is the case, if there's a large amount, that means funds are going away from Minneapolis. What are you going to do about that?
The majority of the comments that I've received from families are around wanting to get the children back in school. That's the number one priority, getting our kids back in school. And certainly as we continue to work through our negotiations and get back in school, we'll have a better understanding of what those numbers might look like. But the priority and focus right now has been getting our kids back in school.
So you don't know any of those numbers?
No, we don't have any information on that.
So regarding the conversation over class size caps, is that still something that the district is a hard no against in terms of enshrining it into the contract? And if so, why? Can you kind of walk us through some of the reasoning and conversations behind that?
We can get you specifics, but we did submit a proposal that has class size caps in the contract.
Okay. And to sort of follow up on something that you said a little earlier when you mentioned that you had said there's nothing keeping teachers from going back to work, there's nothing keeping students from going back to the classroom. Would it be fair to say that you effectively asked the union to call back the strike while you continue negotiations then?
That happened this morning
Okay,
at
that
the table.
happened this morning.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so that was an ask that was made
That was an
to the
ask
union.
that some of the negotiation team made to the union today.
And how did they respond to that?
There wasn't much of a response. It's like with everything else, we'll think, take this under advisement and consider.
Any other questions?
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to updating you in the future.